Gimmicks and RPGs tend to go hand in hand. Fucking around with a pre-established formula can help break up some of the monotony that's kind of inherent to the RPG genre. The very battle system of the game could be a gimmick, like Octopath's break and boost system. An ally could be a gimmick, like with Wobbuffet in Pokemon only being able to do damage from counter and mirror coat. It could be a gimmick enemy, like Tonberry in Final Fantasy punishing the player for all the sins they've committed in their life. And gimmick bosses are pretty common, like Bed of Chaos in Dark Souls, whose gimmick is that she's not fun. And a gimmick with YouTube is that when you watch a video, you have to like and subscribe, or else you'll find a pipe bomb in your mailbox.
There is no meme. This is just a threat.
Fire Emblem tends to do gimmicks with pretty mixed results. There are the infamous desert maps, which change how your units can move throughout the map. The dragon veins from Fates give every map a unique trigger to, again, varying results. I still have nightmares about the pot chapter. And then there's Fog of War, a gimmick a lot of people hate, but personally I think can find maps where it works pretty damn well. But my favorite in the series is Kishuna, a man from Fire Emblem 7 who has probably my favorite gimmick for his maps, even if there are only 3 maps in a single game. So today I wanted to look at his 3 maps and talk about how they slowly ramp up and how they're an underrated gimmick in the series. Kishuna's gimmick is that he emits an area of effect that prevents all magic from being casted within it. This means no picking off enemies from a distance with magic, nor can any of your units use healing magic while inside of it. It walls off half of your army and makes you rely on only your physical units, and that's just how it affects the player. It also affects the enemies. Kishuna can't turn off his power, so enemy units have to play by the same rules. In fact, Kishuna's actually pretty hated by Nurgle and the rest of his cronies because of this. It actually plays into Kishuna's character nicely, as someone who was literally born to be hated and abused his whole life, but that's a discussion for another time. Kishuna's first map is called Imprisoner of Magic, or Prisoner of Magic on Hector mode for some reason I cannot even begin to understand. The map looks scary at first, with a Bolting Sage as a boss who can pelt you from afar and deal some pretty good damage. But a few turns into the map, the aforementioned Prisoner of Magic shows up, emitting his big area of effect, and it makes it so magic users can eat a dick. The gimmick is very fun to me, because there is this huge crescent going along the right and bottom of the map, where the player is completely fine to still use their magic. This means that the player doesn't need to change their strategy too drastically. So it's this neat little gimmick that's not too hard to circumvent, but it does give the player the idea of what Kishuna is, and what to expect from him the next time he shows up. The next map, Genesis, uses the same gimmick, but in a much trickier way. See, now the map is not only much smaller, but the hallways are much more cramped, making it more difficult to avoid the area of effect. There's also promoted enemy spellcasters just outside of the edge of the area of effect, who can definitely do some damage to the player if they're allowed to. So the player is more fucked over by the gimmick, and the enemy is less fucked over, which makes for a fun and challenging map in my opinion. You can run to the edges for healing, sure, but there are stretches where your units have to be in the anti-magic field, forcing you to play by Kishuna's rules. And the map even has a cheeky anti-cheat measure. If the player tries to act cute and shoot Kishuna from the wall, all the walls instantly open up, Kishuna leaves, and the powerful enemies have a free shot to delete you from the plane of existence. It's a cramped map, but one that forces you to tackle it the way it wants to, and I think it makes for a fun change of pace. And the final Kishuna map, the Value of Life, has almost no room for magic. Just tiny corners at the edge where you can squeeze in your heals. On top of that, you can only bring 5 goons in with you, so you have very little wiggle room. This forces the player to completely play by Kishuna's rules, and tackle the powerful enemies in their way without being able to easily cheese them with spells or healing. Combine this with reinforcements that appear far enough away to use their own magic, and a collection of powerful enemies, and this map is definitely the trickiest of the bunch. And like Genesis, it has an anti-cheese measure. If you try to warp right to Kishuna, the game will materialize a bunch of berserkers into Kishuna's room to beat your ass, which I think is pretty fucking hilarious. All in all, it continues to build on the gimmick from the last two maps and makes for a very enjoyable time. And those are Kishuna's 3 maps, an easy to understand gimmick that slowly builds up the difficulty of it. It goes from being easy to avoid and not really much of an issue, to impossible to get around. It's a slow, natural build-up that makes for a trio of fun maps. I wish Fire Emblem did game-wide gimmicks like this more. It kind of feels like reoccurring bosses in Final Fantasy, like Gilgamesh or Seymour Guado, where you have to deal with them and their gimmicks in increasingly more difficult ways. I'm not going to act like they're the greatest maps in the entire franchise, but I do think they're underrated and deserve a look at. And so, in conclusion, as Kishuna himself would say, before this video ends, I would like to thank my patrons for their continued support. If you would like to join the Patreon, the link is in the description below. If you don't, it's no big deal, I'll just find you and beat you to death, so please, make your choice wisely.